Welcome to the next installment of the Farzad Mesbahi podcast. Today I have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Emmet Peppers.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Farzad, for the kind intro. More like the lucky SOB to hit the Tesla options right, and and some other stuff just right in the last couple of years. So yeah,
I think there's probably some very good method to the madness there, but yeah, absolutely. Emmet is the founder, correct? Of a Good Soil Investment, right?
Yeah, Good Soil Investment Management. Yep.
Awesome. And he's been part of the Tesla YouTube community here for the last at least year. I think really the first place where I came across you was the interview with Dave Lee, if I remember correctly. And I'm curious, if we go back 3 years or 3 to 5 years ago to today, did you picture this happening? Like, how does this fit within your sort of like where you imagined your life going? I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, that's a good question. Up until those initial interviews with Dave Lee, I was working at Interactive Brokers in prime brokerage sales, for the last 10 or 12 years. And so I couldn't really go, talk publicly about my personal investing. Obviously, I was a registered rep, and so I, as much as I wanted to be part of Dave Lee's channel, I've known Dave for like 10 years, and we've talked on the forums and such, and I couldn't do it. So as soon as Tesla hit a certain level where I was like, I could retire from my job, and as soon as I put my official resignation in, he had me scheduled for that first interview we did, and it kind of kicked off my, my Tesla Twitterverse stardom, I guess, to whatever degree it is now. There's lots of us out there, it's fun. Sure. But I didn't picture that type of, Tesla tribe, social media, Twitterverse kind of banding together in the future. But 3 to 5 years ago, I did sort of picture Tesla hitting, 500 billion market cap, maybe, but not a trillion so quickly, which is great, obviously. So I did sort of envision Tesla getting to hundreds of billions of dollars of market cap, by this time. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. It's been really fascinating seeing that growth. So you've been following Tesla like since 10 years ago from the forums, like Tesla Motors Club and everything like that?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I've been following it since 2011, for real quick rundown on my story for anyone who hasn't, seen me talk about it before. 2010 or 2011, a friend of mine at Interactive Brokers who worked in IT, we had offices near each other. We would talk about like the latest iPhone, and I was always into new tech and stuff. And somehow, one second, sorry, no spam call here. Let me just put on do not disturb. I hate the spam calls that I get these days. Anyway, so 10 years ago, he had read about, or I had read about, like the Tesla car coming to a local department store on Greenwich Avenue in Greenwich, Connecticut, to be demoed or just to be looked at. And we love new technology, and I guess we researched it or read an article about it previously, and we said, all right, let's meet there Saturday afternoon. And so we went over there, and we were both like sat down. You couldn't drive. It was a prototype Model S. They had a Roadster out back there giving test drives in that I had at the end. But the prototype Model S is what I really fell in love with. Like I sat in it, and that giant touch screen was like obvious. It was like, and I was playing with the software, it was so responsive. I was like, this software, you could just tell the software was like the iPhone software or something. It was just so good, and well designed. And the actual car itself looked nice, and the technology nuances were incredible. And I just fell in love with it and started researching it. My curiosity really piqued, and both him and I both started researching it like crazy. We started buying, long-term options in Tesla. The first round of options expired worthless, but then we did it again in 2012, and those turned into a huge winners in 2013, 2014. So I made my first made my first million basically in 2013 on some crazy Tesla options with like a $5,000 or $10,000 investment. Wow. Yeah. And so that was like it wasn't enough to retire early, because I had a kid on the way and such, and it wasn't enough to retire early at that time. But I was determined to keep investing in Tesla with that money and buying a lot of long-term options. And as many people realize, from 2013 to 2019, the Tesla market cap or stock price kind of languished between like, 30 and 40 or 30 and 50 billion. It didn't really jump to the hundreds of billions until 2019, right? But I had kept envisioning like, hey, this Model S is amazing, best car out there. The Model 3 is kicking off. That's obviously to me going to be a big success. I don't know why the market's not seeing it yet. So I kept buying these long-term options and they would expire worthless. So my $1 million winnings dwindled down to like 500,000 or 400,000 or maybe less. I don't know, over time. But then by 2019, I was really set up well and it ripped, and my personal fortune, got into tens of millions, pretty quickly. And, I was able to retire and do my own thing.
That is so awesome, man. That's such a great story. And so the one thing you touched on is that sort of gap of knowledge that seemed to exist between retail and like everybody else. It seemed like that's where a lot of the opportunity came from for you. Do you feel like that still exists today in 2022? Do you still see that wide of a gap of sort of knowledge or understanding of what Tesla's future could look like? Is it evolving? I'm curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think it's evolving. And I think the longer the story plays out with Tesla, the more bullish, the more I feel like I can see around the corner of what's in store for it. Like more recently in the last year or two, I've been going on the record more saying Tesla is going to be the biggest company in the world. And Elon said that too recently. And I know other Tesla bulls believe that, vehemently as well. I also think Tesla, the stock will be the greatest stock of all time. And I think it'll be widely accepted by the end of this decade. I mean, lots of us might probably already starting to believe this, but I think the story is evolving quickly now. Technology is sort of, one of the big, I think, beliefs I have is technology is accelerating faster than most people realize. Like the rate of change from 2000 to 2010, I'm sure that seemed fast for that time, but the rate of change from 2020 to 2030 is going to be much, much faster, and Tesla is sort of at the forefront of a lot of that with regards to real world AI with their neural networks and robotics, the semi-autonomous robots, basically their cars, and the Tesla bot coming about, the energy paradigm shift. So there's a lot of stuff coming around for Tesla that's really exciting and going to make them, I think, the largest company of all time. So 1 trillion seems big, but multiple trillions of market cap, I think, is around the corner.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that, like, for me, the way I think about Tesla is like, I think there are some analogies around like Model 3 ramp back in 2016, 2017, and Tesla's profitability to like the whole full self-driving story. Like, I still feel like there's quite a bit of doubt, and especially in like the regular Wall Street. I'm not a finance guy, but like the way I think about it is like if you talk to most people and you go to them, at least from my experience, and you tell them, hey, this thing's going to drive itself in a few years. I don't know if it's next year or 5 years from now, but it should be able to drive itself to the point where you don't have to sort of do anything. It's that usual response. No way, this is not going to happen. It's like that sort of very.
No one's going to want to do that. Yeah, people just turn knee jerk. Like, no, that change isn't going to happen. Yeah,
exactly. And then they look back and they see, well, Tesla's already gone up to $1 trillion. It can't keep going up. It's like that sort of like reasoning by analogy kind of process that's so interesting. And what really blew my mind. So when you and I were checking up yesterday to confirm, you'd sent me this link to a Twitter space for TSLAQ. And I went in there and it was one of the most fascinating things I've ever experienced in my life. And I don't want to discredit another human being saying, blah, blah, they don't know what they're talking about. But at the same time, it was very, very fascinating seeing what sort of, I guess, reasons or variables the other side of the coin is really focused on. And it seems like they're really just focused hardcore on, well, Elon's a fraudster. It's just a fraud, What's your take on that? Because I'm really curious, like, does TSLAQ have any, like, how can something like this happen? And I'm not saying Elon is a perfect person. Who knows? There might be a 0.00001% chance they're right. But like, I'm curious, like, from a psychology standpoint, like, how does this happen? Do you have any takes on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think people form a belief too early a lot of times prior to investigation of the actual underlying thing they're forming a belief on. And so maybe early on, some of these folks were very easily swayed into thinking Elon's a fraudster when the case could have appeared that way. If someone's new to Elon and Tesla story, like 5 or 7 years ago, they're bleeding cash. Headlines are like they're about to go bankrupt, blah, blah, blah. So someone could have more easily been like new to Tesla, and Elon could have easily been swayed by the wrong people, I think, early on to believe that, hey, Elon is a fraud. I'm going to shorten this thing. This thing's going down, And so once you kind of dig, I feel like the human nature is once you kind of dig your heels in on a belief system that you're sort of forming your worldview on around that industry or topic, it's very hard to reverse out of it and kind of like, reinvent yourself and you reinvent your assumptions that you have built into that belief. So, I've struggled with myself with all kinds of things in personal living or whatever, not just investing, obviously, but to be aware of it is very hard even, and so these people, you see it with the Flat Earth Society people, that's the extreme version,
Sure.
But they believe it. They truly believe in it, so now you have sort of something similar going on with Elon's a fraudster, Tesla's, vaporware and all this stuff. But sooner or later, it's going to become more of an extreme. More and more people, though, those people will somehow come to terms, I would think. And if not, they're just going to always kind of be a conspiracy, seen as a conspiracy theorist by most other people, I think. So it's just a human nature thing. Like it's very hard for us to like think our whole assumption model for a belief system we have in place. I don't know. That's at a high level what I'm thinking, but it's not like they're not like necessarily personally an evil person or anything. Like part of me wants to think like this person is evil. Like they think that, but I don't think that's the case. I have to be empathetic and be like, there's probably things I'm in my life somewhere where I'm super wrong, even though I believe it strongly. And, this is just one of those things those people are,
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you 100%. And so when you think about your own investment thesis and like how you approach investing, like how often does that pop into your head? Is like how, like the whole, I don't want to be TSLAQ, right? Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
If I'm comparing myself, like how often does that pop into your head and what sort of tools and methods do you use to ensure that you're not going down that path?
Well, I love Twitter. My pinned tweet on my Twitter kind of has a mini thread on how I do it with Twitter, for example. Like I love to follow the opposite viewpoints of what I believe, and try to tolerate it as best I can. I did that more recently with like Bitcoin, for example. I've been an early Bitcoin investor. I owned Bitcoin since 2011 or 12, just a small amount at the time. Or at the time, it was a lot of money to me, but now it's worth a lot. Obviously, I've held it. But so I've been a pro Bitcoin believer from the beginning. And more recently, I've like tried to look at the other side, and parts of it is like, maybe like being a Bitcoin maximalist is a little bit delusional in some ways, and like the energy consumption concerns could be real, and stuff like that. So like I try to follow people who, are complaining about that versus people who are Bitcoin maximalists, which is already all over my Twitter feed anyway. But, whatever it is, I try to follow TSLAQ people, and I try to find, a certain amount of them, and a lot of them have me blocked.
I was just going to say, I try to follow them, and like 99% of them, I can't even. It's like
occasionally there's like a podcast, like there's one guy called Quoth the Raven. I remember that was his podcast name, Quoth the Raven, Quoth. But he's done a number of podcast interviews with Tesla bears, like well-known Tesla bears. I think he did one like with Montana Skeptic once, and he's done it with like a couple other people, and I've listened to them, and those people sound very intelligent sometimes, and can make like, if you're coming into the situation not knowing anything about Tesla, it can make a very compelling case of why Tesla could be a fraud or whatever, the next Enron, so it's just good to try to take as much information as I can from all sides, all perspectives, and to be able to form my own. And that seems to be, there's many ways to look at the same thing. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Do you think anybody can do that? Do you feel like everybody can be a good investor, or do you think it's is it a personality thing? Curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think anyone could be, could do it if they practiced at it and like consciously really like made an effort to do it. I think it's very hard for some people though. I know some people that it feels like it must be close to impossible to kind of get them to really see everyone else's view. But it's really, in the end of the day, it's about empathy and just being able to put yourself in other people's shoes and imagine why they're thinking the way they are about a certain thing. And then, just really try to get in their mindset, like psychologically, and so the more empathetic I think I can be in whatever application of life, the better I can apply it to investing as well, and that's been really helpful to me. I like to see the long and the short case for a stock that I'm investing in, for example, or, it's not just two. Sometimes it's not just two views. Sometimes there's lots of different views. Like with Tesla, we're discovering, there's lots of different bull case views with Tesla. The bulls disagree often of one view versus another bull case view, and same with the bears. And so you just I feel like it's great to just explore as many different views as possible, to try to figure out what makes the most sense to me. Yeah. I mean, do you do something like that with you've been investing in Tesla for a long time. How did you come to conviction?
Yeah. For me, great question. Like for me, it's so I discovered it back in 2012 through the Tesla Motors Club. And it was because, I wanted to start dabbling in investing. Right. And the thing that really, and I had zero investing experience. It's just something I was trying to dabble in. So you could say a lot of my sort of success with Tesla is probably mostly luck, to be completely honest. But I think one of the things that really stuck out to me was it seemed so obvious. Like the outcome seemed so obvious. If that chance of success was high enough, it was a no-brainer investment, right? And then and there just seemed to be a huge dissonance between the people that were really huge fans of the company and those that didn't know anything about it. Like those that knew about it were so sold on it. And the thing that really sold me were Dave's posts back on TMC, so his mega threads, where there was math behind it. It wasn't just like, oh, this is the greatest company ever. Elon's a genius. It's like, this is why this is going to work out. If they hit a certain volume level, if their margins are at this level and they're able to enter new markets and blah, 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 then Tesla has a huge potential to grow. And then once that initial 2013 run up went, when the first quarter or the first profitable quarter was posted, then I really started researching a lot more into it. And it seemed like the long-term potential of the company seemed unlimited in a way because of that sort of the leadership of Elon and the risks that Tesla is willing to make from building products from scratch without having to reason by analogies. That's sort of like, hey, let's kind of come out with brand new products that make a lot of sense that are going to eventually solve core issues for humanity, I guess, if you think about it that way. So that dissonance really was the primary driver for me. And that's how I try to invest from now on. And I mean, Tesla's by far my largest holding, but I'm trying to apply that same sort of technique is like, where are the opportunities where from a math perspective, if the company executes, it looks like a home run and nobody knows about it. But that's like, it's really hard to find those things. And I don't spend too much time doing it, but like, how I mean, is that?
One question for you is, what was your I'm curious, what was your handle on Tesla Motor Club Forum? Maybe I would remember to recognize
Farzad.
I do remember your handle. Yeah. I don't know if you remember. I didn't post a whole lot, but occasionally I'd go through posts. It was Tesla, TSLAQ.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then I had to change it to Tesla OPT #1 because my first one got banned for arguing I was arguing for the pros of Falcon Wing doors with some people, some threads, and someone complained and I got banned for indefinitely. Later on, I got unbanned. I don't know. I mean, Tesla Motor Club Forum was a great resource.
Oh my God.
It was incredible, but yeah, I mean, I remember your handle too. Yeah, you had some great posts from time to time. And I remember after the 2013 run up, maybe we'll find that Dave's posted it a couple times here and there, and maybe on Twitter even. I don't know, but there was a 2013 video we did, or I think it was early 2014. We did the video of. It was like the first, it was like early YouTube video, or it was like a Google Meet, like recorded.
I think I remember
Dave,
that.
like 10 years ago interviewing me. And I was like on the code name alias TSLAQ because I couldn't reveal who my name was because I was working and I put my hat on. So it was hard to recognize me, but we were basically talking about my Tesla option returns. And there was like 4 or 5 other people on there talking about their returns. And it was just a fun, like early, Tesla community YouTube stream of, and Dave looks younger. It's funny. We should put that in the details section.
We should. I'll definitely add that. Let me make a note of that to make sure I post that. I'm sure Dave's going to love that.
I'm surprised we didn't get you involved in that. Yeah.
I mean, I was very like, I was the way, I don't have the chops that you guys have from a financial background. Like one of those things is like for me, it's more, I try to reason more from like, I just very basic in my thinking. It's just, does it seem like a very huge opportunity? Yes, go ahead and get into it. And that's how I approach really my life in general. That's, and I try to apply that for investing. So I learned my investing, whatever knowledge I have, through those forums. And I was able to apply all those different variables to different investments, whatever, real estate, or whatever you want. It's a very core set of like lessons or skills that are very transferable, I feel like, in investing. So,
for sure.
But yeah, a TMC was just such a unique, weird place, because it's just, there was a gold mine after gold mine and like nuggets of information that, like, I oftentimes was like, how does no one know about this? Like, it blew my mind. Like, I was like, it shocked me to a point, but I'm so glad I found it. And it was because of you and Dave and everybody else that it was in the community doing the work and really talking about the opportunities and why Tesla is such a huge thing going forward. It made it possible for so many retail investors. It's almost like, do you think that TMC is like the reason, like one of the reasons why retail investors have so much more power now is like communities like that drove it? I'm curious to hear that. Like, how do you think about that?
I think so. I mean, Reddit would have filled the void if not TMC. And there was, Tesla had its own like
the forums, right?
Hosted forums at one point, and I would go in there occasionally. And there was like some other, but TMC was like the main one. And I think, that type of congregation online of retail investors, and we've seen it more recently with Wall Street bets and these like meme stock craziness, I think, in some degree. So it's really fascinating to see it evolve. And it's huge, without the TMC forums. I had my friend in IT, and we talked to each other almost every other day at work about Tesla and why it's, we'd kind of reinforce each other's belief system, even when stock was down 10% one day or whatever, and it was stressful. So that was helpful, but without the online forums to like research and really help further my conviction in the face of fear of the stock getting crushed by like 50% from its highs, in a matter of weeks or whatever it was, the case, if I was all alone, I don't know if I could have held on, so the forums allow you to kind of keep that conviction, trust in your beliefs of like, hey, I am right. This is just noise. Tesla will be big in the future. Yeah.
I agree 100%. That's such a good point you just made. I would have sold, I think, probably during that sort of Model 3 ramp, where the stock was just getting completely destroyed. I would have been, I really think I would have been out, because it was just so much. And it would have been right before I joined Tesla too, because, I think they really started the ramp in 2016-ish. It was released 2017, I think, the Model 3, or this 2016. I can't remember the exact date, but it was around that time. And it would have been weird. And what's crazy is that not, TMC sort of helped me, step off the ledge, and then joining Tesla, like, made my conviction go like completely through the roof. I was like, this is totally going to happen. So it was very fascinating. What a cool thing. So do you view, so like, things like Robinhood now, I feel like are like an extension of that a little bit. The way I think about it is like you're allowing the retail investor to become more and more involved. And, those folks typically have their own ways of researching, stocks and all that stuff. Do you feel like that's a net positive or a net negative or neutral to the investment community? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. Like the whole
I think it's definitely net positive. Definitely net positive. I think the more people learn about investing and how the capital markets work, the better, and in the past, people would just give money to their financial advisor, their 401k would just go into mutual funds, and mutual funds would be like fund of funds of other mutual funds. And there'd just be fees upon fees. And, institutional Wall Street is the establishment is just collecting, they're just making fees and fees and fees. Yeah. And now I think there's more transparency. The research is open sourced. You can see like, quote unquote, sell side research is kind of like, just from Tesla, it's like ridiculous. It's like a dog, and it's like a clown show in some respects. It's like they're really just appeasing their institutional clients who call them for ideas to get trade. So they're not. There's just a lot of conflicts of interest or biases, and I think the best is the open source research you can get from like really good Twitter handles, now. I mean, 10 years ago, you couldn't find anything about Tesla on Twitter. Like I would search occasionally, and once in a while Elon would post, and it would be cool. But, like there was hardly any analysis you couldn't find on. There was no specialty Tesla analysts on Twitter, like retail people talking about it. Now it's like all over the place. It's great.
Yeah.
And you have it for like all kinds of stocks, all kinds of stocks. So I think it's really good, but people have to also be extra careful because there's a lot of like, not only scams with like the initial coin offerings with crypto these days and such and NFTs, but in the stock world, like even though stocks are regulated and exchange traded and such more secure, but you have a lot of bad research too. A lot of people, trying to become research analysts that might have, very bad information or just be completely wrong, on things. And so sometimes we don't even know who those people are. It takes time to figure it out, so you just have to really see all different sides and make your own decisions and kind of take responsibility. But you have the tools to take responsibility now, whereas before those tools were not really available.
Yeah, great points. How do you see it evolving in the next 10 years, this sort of like retail investor sort of phenomenon? Have you thought about that? Like if you fast forward 10 years, what it looks like?
That's a great question. I think ETFs are going to become a bigger part of the investment world. We already see, Bitcoin is close to having a spot, Bitcoin spot ETF. And I think that could open the door for other crypto spot ETFs, for example. So, I think that
sorry, Emmet, so spot ETF, can you define that for me real quick?
Yeah, so there is a Bitcoin ETF now, but it's an ETF is an exchange traded fund. It's like a ticker you type in, and you can buy and sell like a stock on your brokerage system or brokerage account. So a spot Bitcoin ETF is basically an ETF that buys and sells Bitcoin on the open market, at the current Bitcoin prices. There's already a Bitcoin futures ETF that was recently approved, and that's pretty close, but there's all these extra costs embedded in buying Bitcoin futures and rolling them over next month and such. So you can get exposure to Bitcoin through an ETF now with the Bitcoin futures ETF, but it's a little more costly. I think when the spot Bitcoin ETF comes out, and there'll be like a spot Ethereum ETF, and maybe you'll open the floodgates for all kinds of ETFs are really exploding, and they're really replacing mutual funds and maybe even hedge funds in the future to a large degree. So I think in the future, you'll have stock pickers still. You'll still have retail people like you and me kind of researching ourselves, forums or Twitter, or whatever the next Twitter is, if there is a next Twitter, YouTube channel analysis on different stocks, and we'll pick a few that we like. And then you'll have like the people that want to just give their money to other people or indexes. And then you'll have like the people that want to, and there'll be ETFs for that as well, like Cathie Wood's ARK investment ETF or just the S&P 500 ETF or whatever. But then you'll have a whole broad range of ETFs for specific niches, like a NFT ETF or, a Bored Apes NFT ETF, even like that type of niche, maybe. Obviously a Bitcoin ETF is in the near future, and you have maybe an ETF for like venture capital for batteries or something. Like, I don't know. I think in 10 years, I'm hoping the regulations with ETFs will get knocked down where you'll have that capability for a huge variety of ETFs, where you can it's more secure. I think in my mind, people think it's more secure, more accessible. If you can buy and sell in your Robinhood or Schwab or Fidelity or Interactive Brokers account, something, you don't have to have like 10 different things. Maybe Coinbase will be, have a securities account capabilities by then too, obviously. And not only can you buy and sell crypto, but you can buy ETFs of crypto in Coinbase. And I think there's some security in having an ETF that holds Bitcoin versus holding Bitcoin itself, because there's insurance embedded in the ETF, in case it gets lost or something. Whereas if you hold the actual, Bitcoin itself, it's a lot less secure. There's not really insurance for you if something gets hacked. I don't know. There's just interesting, I think, reasons why I think ETFs could be a big part of the future too.
That's very interesting. So would those ETFs would they still have to be created by organizations? Can an individual create an ETF in the future? Like how would that look?
Yeah. So you have to, ETFs are created by financial companies, registered financial companies. But there's like ETF there's like companies out there. I think one's called, like a friend of mine set one up called like Alpha ETF, or Alpha Architect is the name of his firm. But I think they created like an ETF building service. So basically, you could just like Farzad, you could talk to them and say, hey, I want to set up an ETF of my favorite stocks. I have a big YouTube following and they want to invest with me. They'd probably walk you through a few things to get yourself registered with the, SEC or whatever needs to be done. It wouldn't be possible. It would take a little bit of time. And maybe then you have to agree to like a couple $100,000 or $100,000 a year of ongoing costs to keep it going. But then basically you're just a portfolio manager, a basket of stocks, and all your followers could buy like the ticker, it could be your initials or whatever, on the open exchange. And there's a small a fee of whatever you decide. Some of the ETFs have, 5 basis points, or maybe they have 100 basis points or whatever as an annual fee. And to administer and keep it going and, pay for expenses or whatever. So I think there's a big movement towards ETFs going on in institutional finance, especially now. And I think that really favors retail investors.
Okay. The first thing that came into my mind when I thought about my own ETF, my wife likes to call me Farts Hard. That's her so fart would be my ticker. I think that's what I would call it.
That's probably already
stand out.
Yeah, you probably buy it. Some people already bought all the tickers up that make worms, and you have to buy them from other people. Probably. Man,
it's like a domain. Like you have to go for.
It is.
My God,
yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. I want to shift gears towards your fund. So the Good Soul. I'm curious, since you've started it. So when I think about managing my own funds, I put a lot of pressure on myself to ensure that I'm building a good future for, alongside my wife, for our family, taking care of the people that we need to take care of. But now you are not just taking care of your own stuff. Now you're taking, I'm assuming, other people's money are, they're coming into your fund. Can you walk me through what that pressure feels like? Do you feel any pressure? I'm just the psychology of it. I'm very curious to hear, because I'm already freaking out about my own money. Then I'm trying to put myself in your head. I'm like, man, walk me through that.
Yeah. So it is a lot of pressure. The way we set up the fund is it's about, 20% of my personal net worth in the fund itself. The other, 70 or 80% of my net worth is mostly in Tesla stock and a few other things more, that are stable somewhat. The fund is very high risk. It does a lot of risky investing in stocks with options and such. Mm-hmm. And so when we take on when my partner Matt and I take on new investors, we always make sure to let them know we require this to be no more than 10% of your personal net worth to invest in our fund. Because we want to be able to sleep at night. Like you said, our fund is actually built to be risky. It's built to be the risky portion of someone's portfolio or diversification process, and so if someone wants, sometimes people are like, oh, I want to give you all my money. And it's like, no way. We even have our hedge fund administrator, who's like a third party, has to be the agent between us, the investors. They verify that it's not more than 10% of the investor's net worth that they're investing with to meet our minimums. So at least knowing that helps me sleep at night a little bit. It's still a lot of pressure when we see our fund to go up or down, 10 or 20% in a single day. Occasionally, it's kind of really, really, that's how we position our fund, is to be risky. So,
comes with the territory.
I had an incredible year in 2020. That was just my personal funds when it was an incubator fund. But that type of return, I think it was 13,000% return or something in 1 year. Whoa. That's, it was crazy. That was my personal funds. I started with 100,000 and went to 13 million or whatever. And that was a lot of options with buying put options on the index right before the COVID crash, buying lots of long-term call options on Tesla before that, and then after that, and then other growth stocks at the bottom, long-term options. Anyway, the returns in 2020 were incredible, but that type of return will never happen again. And so I would make sure to let investors know, we're definitely being regressed to the mean. 2021, we just got a performance. I think we were up around 20% for the year, which we're happy with, because we actually sort of benchmark ourselves internally to the ARK investment, flagship fund, because we've played in the same sandbox of growth and tech stocks they do. But it's very volatile. At the end of November, I think we were up 80% on the year.
Wow.
And then we ended the year only up 20% after December, right? So our fund can go way back and forth. It's very up and down. We think we should beat the S&P 500. We expect to beat the S&P 500 over the medium and long term, but anything can happen. It's very risky. And so that's why we don't let more than 10% of someone's net worth go into our fund.
Smart. Very, very smart. Is this the first business you've created or helped create? Yes,
this is the first business I founded and created. That's right. ideas in the past, never followed through with any of them. But this is the first one where and I thought long and hard about this. I almost didn't do it. I had a dream when I worked at Interactive Brokers. Like we were talking about earlier, I thought Tesla could get to like a few $100 billion in market cap, and I'd calculate, if it gets to like 300 or 500 billion market cap, I'll have like 5 million or 10 million. I could retire and start my own hedge fund. At that point, there's a lot of I serviced a lot of startup hedge funds when I was a prime broker salesperson. I saw lots of Goldman Sachs executives leave, or just high net worth people try to start a hedge fund. Doctors, want to start a hedge fund with a few $1,000,000 or whatever. So I always, in the back of my mind, I was like, that sounds interesting. I know it works. I know how to get it going. I'd love to do that, try it myself. Even though most of them fail, like the restaurant industry, most of them fail within a couple of years or a few years. They don't really do that well. I always wanted to give it a shot, and so I always envision when I get to like the 5 or 10 million net worth, I could retire from my job and try to start a hedge fund with a few $1,000,000 of my own money. And then when my net worth shot up in 2020, exponentially, a few orders of magnitude, then it was like, I have more than enough money for me and my family that we'll ever need. I'm not interested in starting a hedge fund anymore to make money, And so I and also at the same time, I felt like the world could be ending with this COVID craziness. It was like, no one knew. We're all kind of locked in our houses, trying to wash our groceries before we bring them inside, and all this craziness. And so I really had to pray about it and think hard about it. And finally came to the conclusion, like, if I do have some God-given talent to have incredible returns, I should use it for more than my personal wealth and try to do something good with it. And the good soil investment management came to mind when I was reading something called The Parable of the Sower from my Bible study class. And the seed that falls on the good soil has like 100 times return or whatever. And that's like, I was like, that's like my investing results occasionally in certain years. And so yeah, I started Good Soil Investment Management with the idea to do something good with it, where I'm we changed our fee structure so that half of the fees net of expenses goes to charity. So we have the similar fee structures of every other hedge fund, 2 and 20, it's called 2% management fee and 20% performance fee. But half of that after expenses go to charity.
Wow.
And it's written into our prospectus, it's like a law of the fund, And so our dream is to be successful enough where it inspires maybe more hedge fund managers to start something similar, where ESG has become a huge investing theme over the last 10 years. Yeah. Maybe giving back and altruistic capitalism can become a big theme, because I think ultimately capitalism needs to evolve, and socialism is not the right way. And I think I'm afraid we're heading that direction. Yeah. Especially amongst younger voters coming to age, being sucked into some of those ideologies. And so maybe if they can see capitalism as being more giving back and not so greedy, then maybe we can prevent the kind of too much of a radical change to socialism. That's my higher goal. That's what keeps me going every day.
That's amazing, man. I'm so happy you exist. That's so good.
I mean, there's other people trying to do another similar altruistic capitalism things. Like my partner and I were just talking about. Have you heard of the Bitcoin or crypto exchange FTX?
I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it. Yeah,
it's like Coinbase, but FTX is, I think, even more dominant internationally than Coinbase. Coinbase is like the U.S. central Bitcoin, but FTX, letters FTX. This guy, Sam Brinkman-Friedman, is like a genius. He's like one of those generational founders in finance or something. Like, if you listen to his interviews, he's just like super smart, knows what he's talking about. But he's really got a huge altruistic capitalism component to his business, which is fascinating. So I think if you get more people that become really successful, putting this in as part of their business, then hopefully that can help evolve capitalism so that, the most successful in capitalism can do more than just pay taxes. We can actually imprint giving back as part of our success in a kind of more significant way.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So I 100% agree with you, and that's one thing that I think with more people having like technology, the internet and stuff like that has enabled people like yourself and Dave with his Afghanistan food relief fund that he raised, $450,000. Like, that's another example where I'm like, oh my God, like people that have a little bit of influence and also capital to build something where they can help other people willingly seems to have become a little bit more of a trend, at least as of late. But I'm curious, do you think we have everything that we need from a society perspective to move capitalism towards that goal, or do you think other things have to happen? Because I shared that with you a lot. I really hope that's where we're going with capitalism. But like, do you feel like there are missing variables in society for us to get there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the missing variables is a lack of trust or skepticism with people that are in a position to give money. In that, you don't want to just, if you're giving away your money that you worked to earn, like you don't necessarily want to just give it to anyone who's going to knock at your door asking for money, like any charity, because there's some of them, I don't know, but a proportion of them are kind of not scams, but just like they maybe use most of the funds to further their own personal, lifestyle, and only a small percentage of it goes to the actual cause, for example. So I think there's some of that. And I think there's the perception of that, at least, that hurts. I think if we can get over that hump and figure out better ways to give that people trust, I would think that there should be, more capital freed up to be given. Yeah. But I think that some of the traps there are, like, we set up a foundation ourselves as part of the fund. And before even I set up the fund, a little foundation that we're using as a vehicle to give money from. But I think, really wealthy folks that set up these foundations, the foundations can quickly become their own kind of bureaucratic trap, where it's like, you have a team of people running the foundation, or an organization, like whether it's a Bill Gates Foundation or whatever it is. Like, some of these foundations can have so much capital, but they're so like big and clunky, they can't act quickly, unlike the Afghanistan food thing, like the foundation set up, like it's just, they can't just give, they have all these guidelines and check boxes to check before they can give money to something. And somehow that just is, I think, causing a lot of friction. So if we can somehow eliminate some of that friction, and so, it's there for a good reason, right? You don't want to just give money to any so-called foundation, right? You need to find some way to cut through that friction so that money can be moved quickly to the actual needy folks. Yeah.
That's a great point. And like, so when you say trust, and that makes a lot of sense to me, that the one fear I have, or maybe it's like the point of inflection, but trust seems like at an all-time low in society. Like, especially with the stuff that's happening with news media, whatever mainstream media. It's like, and the thing that really blew my mind is like, once I really got familiar with Tesla and I started following Tesla in the mainstream media, I'm like, nobody really knows what the hell they're talking about. Like, what else do they not know what they're talking about? Right. So like, that trust factor, like, and I don't know if it's me getting older and getting more familiar with that stuff, or it's a point of like an all-time low when it comes to our society. And do we need to reach that point for it to sort of reverse and go towards that future that you just described, right? I agree with you 100%. It's such a weird time that we're in. So
it is weird. Yeah. Like, one thing I just discovered recently about giving is there was a guy who I can't remember his name, gave a TED talk, well-known guy. He set up like some big breast cancer awareness foundation, I believe, that ended up bringing in like hundreds of millions of dollars, some astronomical amount, right? But he gave the story about how initially it was he had like a $50,000 amount grant to like, and he could have given the whole $50,000 to the breast cancer, but instead he allocated like 30,000 or 60% to marketing the effort, and so that's seen as like overhead, but the overhead marketing ultimately led to the pie growing much and much bigger, to where you had like $100 million. And even if like $30 million of it was for marketing, at least there was now $70 million to be given, so it wasn't, it was an interesting case he made that sometimes, for example, we look at overhead of a foundation. We're like, oh, don't give that. There's too much overhead that's going to the people's lifestyles or whatever. But sometimes overhead can be used to just grow the pie bigger for that effort, and it was just open my eyes up, like, to look at like foundations and charities that, I think most people kind of have certain ideas where like, oh, if there's too much overhead in that foundation, automatically to me means that they're not efficient use of capital. I don't want to give to that,
Yeah, but the interesting point there is like, I tend to think, so Pareto rule, so 80-20, like maybe 20% of those funds that have high overhead actually are growing that pie, whereas 80% are not, right? So
yeah, it's true.
That's that's very interesting. I wanted to go back to one of the comments you made earlier about starting your fund. So you said during the COVID time, and like you saw everything going crazy, like that seemed to be one of the catalysts. If COVID never happened, do you see yourself where you are with this fund? You think it would have happened anyway?
That's a great question. I've never thought about it. I mean, if COVID never happened, I'm not sure Tesla would be as high as it is right now. I think there was a lot of shift to tech stock, more awareness brought to Tesla as it grew really fast. I mean, Tesla might, in my mind, be like that few $100 billion market company right now, but still growing, still have the runway ahead of it itself, obviously, but it might just advance a little faster, quicker than it otherwise would have because of the COVID crash and then rebound after a lot of tech stocks in particular. So my personal net worth would not be, nearly as high in many respects. I probably would have still left my job after a certain net worth level by that time, but yeah, I'm not sure I would have started. That's a great question. I'm not sure I would have started Good Soil Investment Management. It might have been called Peppers Capital Management or something. I don't know. So that's a great question. Yeah,
okay, awesome. Interesting. So
I'm thankful, and maybe in some way I've more reflect on it. Maybe I should become, depending on how successful this gets, I could find a way to be thankful for COVID.
Yeah, you're a very smart guy. I'm sure it's going to kick ass, man. It's gonna do great. Yeah, I think, and that's one thing. That's some of the. With the whole COVID deal, and I try to think about this a lot. Obviously, it brought a lot of despair, and we're still reeling from a lot of it. But I'm curious, how many silver linings there are out there from the whole period that has enabled. I don't want to call it the next generation, but some of the things that are happening now, where folks had time to reflect and make decisions based on that. Potentially terrible time for their families and whatever, to build their next 20, 40 years, and that's something I think about a lot. And, I think your fund is an example of that. It sounds like, potentially me making the decisions to move on with my passions and everything. COVID was a huge part of that because it really forced me to reflect. I think about that a lot. And I'm curious to hear more stories about that. The silver lining of COVID. Of course, it was awful. And I know people that were very, very sick, but at the same time, others, it may have kickstarted things that are going to get us to a much brighter future 20 years from now. Who knows? Or it won't. I don't know. Maybe it's the opposite. I have no idea.
No, I think the biggest benefactor of COVID is the advancement of mRNA technology and how quickly we can get vaccines up and running. So, next time, if it's much more deadly, we could hopefully get a kick-ass vaccine out much faster, or kills, a third of the population or something.
For sure.
Close to 10% or something, you could, I think that's the greatest silver lining, is the preparedness we are now for this stuff going forward. We see how many mistakes the government hopefully there's some, the government, I don't have much faith in government bureaucracies improving or whatever, but I think there's lots of private businesses out there set up to kind of, take advantage, and not take advantage, but just handle and support, in a profitable way for them, the way for the world to handle the next epidemic.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. Let's shift gears a little bit to Tesla and what's been going on here in the last couple of weeks. I saw you've been talking with Dave about it, and I've been watching some of your videos as well on your YouTube channel. Seems like this week, starting, I guess, yesterday, or I can't even remember what is it today? Wednesday? I don't even know what day it is. I think it's Wednesday. So how are you interpreting the moves this week for Tesla? It seems like we're back to almost, if I'm looking at the ticker now, $1,100. We're up 3.2%. Talk me through what you think is going on.
It's always a good day to do these chats when Tesla's up, right?
Yeah, right.
But $1,100 right now, about as we're talking, and I think Tesla, the gross margins surprise in Q4. I think that was a huge data point, and I think most of us who are kind of in the know on Tesla realize that wasn't just a one off. That this quarter the gross margins are going to be probably comparable, if not better. But I would just be conservative, say comparable. But if comparable even to last quarter, I think that's a good sign for Tesla in terms of institutional managers who, will think much higher of Tesla being a money printer going forward versus just a grower of bit revenue, but without margins. So I think there's going to be kind of a institutional perception shift going on with Tesla that's, started several quarters ago, and it's continuing. It takes a while for that to happen fully. But I don't know if you remember, but when there was the S&P inclusion, there was a number of outspoken institutional money managers or fund managers. And that's, not typical necessarily for these institutional portfolio managers to be outspoken, but there was several articles I remember seeing where they were like saying Tesla should not be included in the S&P 500. It's not.
I remember that.
Ready, blah, blah, blah. And so there was still a lot of minds to change. You could tell back then, right? And so I think over time, there's less and less minds of institutional money managers to change that Tesla is a, very important company for the future of the stock market and for the future of society in a lot of ways. It's here to stay. It's not some kind of like flash in the pan company, So I think that this kind of mind changing is happening, and over the next, several months, if Tesla, I think it will execute. I think the stock, people talk about, $1,500 stock price. I mean, I could see $1,500 by the time the earnings comes out in a week or a few weeks, like
same.
People put these, it goes up $100 in a day. Sometimes I could see 2 or 3 days where it's up $100 and all of a sudden we're at these $1,500 price targets. We're like, what next?
Yeah.
So, but anything could happen. Like, if the macro market, collapses again with growth in tech stocks, Tesla will go down to some degree with it. I think it's got a good backstop with the earnings, and so it can't get more than cut in half in my mind. But at the same time, I think it could triple from here this year, potentially best case, but I'm not saying that's going to happen. But, I think we kind of bounce between, 800 and 2,000. That's my best guess for this year. But I'm not sure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the way I think about it is it's going to be hard to ignore Tesla's capability to generate cash this year, just because you'll have Berlin and Austin ramping. They won't be fully ramped because, I think if they're trying to reach the goals they're saying, it's going to take them a couple of years to get to that maximum level of at least to get to that number. But regardless, the product that's going to be coming out of those facilities, as everybody in the Tesla community knows, it's with the operating leverage, the margin is going to go down to the net income line. It's going to be a huge boost to how much cash you generate every quarter. I just don't see how that gets ignored from this point forward. It seems it's going to be so obvious. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's going to appear very obvious for folks. And the way I think about it is, okay, so if that happens and the investment community feels that their growth trajectory is still in the 50% range year over year for the next few years, as they grow into their 20 million car goal by 2030. And they're able, and it's obvious that anytime they throw up a new factory, it's just going to dump a bunch of cash to the bottom line. I think that lays the foundation for the company to become the most valuable in the world at some point in the next couple of years. I think the biggest variable that takes it there, and I made a video about this, but it's if full self-driving also starts getting to that point where, because right now I feel like the price has 0% full self-driving built in, the way I think about it. That's sort of my opinion. I have no idea how to confirm that or not, but that's how I think about it. But if 20% of the population starts believing, or the market, or the people that invest in the company believe that full self-driving is going to become a real thing, I think that's the key variable that says, okay, Tesla has a foundation of tremendous cash generation, super solid fundamentally. Oh, and they have this industry changing technology that once they flip it on, it's going to completely change the economics around transportation, right? As soon as that becomes an obvious thing, I think that's where Tesla truly goes to most valuable company in the world. And I don't know if that's going to happen later this year. I don't know if that's going to happen next year, but once full self-driving becomes obvious, I think the 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, I don't know, but I just have a hard time understanding why that wouldn't happen. I'm curious how does that sound? Does that sound like a logical way of approaching it?
No, it sounds logical. I think there's a lot less liquidity the higher price points you go on Tesla as full self-driving comes to fruition. Because I think like you said, as full self-driving becomes more obvious to everyone, then you have more Tesla portfolio managers that hold Tesla, and retail investors obviously too. But you have more of those people that say, hey, I would not sell Tesla until it gets to become the most valuable company in the world or above that. Right now they might think, oh, I'll sell it at 1,500 or 2,000. But as the price gets, as full self-driving becomes more apparent, they'll move their internal expectations of how big Tesla can become. And that means they're less willing to sell their shares of Tesla. Okay. And so the new people whose minds are being changed and have to get a piece of Tesla to, not miss out, they're going to have to keep buying at higher and higher prices. So I think that you're right. I think that it's sort of, when it stays range bound for a while, there's a lot of, a flood of buyers and sellers, a lot of liquidity, but when you break out of that range because there's some new developments going on, we get to like $1,500 plus, suddenly the stock can move up and kind of get re-rated or whatever, so to speak, pretty quickly and go up like $1,000 in like a week or two, and I could see that happening, like who's going to sell, the 100,000 shares that portfolio manager A needs to now buy once Tesla breaks 1,500 because full self-driving level 4 is obvious, like who's going to sell them that 100,000 shares? And there's going to be a number of those kind of institutional buyers, and I just think that number of institutional buyers is going to be greater than the number of institutional sellers at that point, at that price level. And that's going to create the price to just go further up. Because there's still a lot of minds to be changed, as we, talked about from that TSLAQ Twitter space. We went on, there's still a lot of people still in disbelief or very skeptical of Tesla.
Yeah. But even when I talk, I listen to like a Dan Ives, who I really respect, who's the French gentleman? I forget his name. Pierre, I think. Yeah. Awesome. I love his accent. I freaking love that man so much. The way he talks is so awesome. But even those folks, it doesn't seem like they really built full self-driving true potential into their model. So even the folks that appear to be strong bulls from a like the general market, not the retail investors, but the other side of it. Even those folks don't seem like they're really giving full self-driving a value until they see it with their own two eyes. I think it's a fair way of looking at it. But
they don't know how to model it. They don't have the spreadsheet model for it.
Yeah,
ARK Investments kind of tried to explore it in their analysis, which is good. But I think you're right. A lot of the normal auto analysts, they need spreadsheet. They have their spreadsheet process, and they just don't. It breaks their process. Same with the Tesla prospects of the Tesla bot. They don't know how to model that, what that would do in the future. But they don't really go that far out typically. Anyway, they just go a couple of years out. Yeah,
and then the other variable for full self-driving too, and I don't know if you agree with this, but it seems like as the technology becomes more and more apparent and obvious, Elon has said that they're going to look to increase the price as it becomes more and more obvious that it's going to be transformational. It's going to work, right? But then as that price keeps going up, demand should also increase along with that, because it's going to be so transformational as well for people that just don't want to drive anymore, businesses that want to run fleets, older folks that can't have access to like a car or whatever to get around. It's going to enable a brand new market. God knows how many other things. You might have people living on the road 24/7 in an RV that drives itself, right? They never have to sit anywhere. So has that happened before, where something that becomes extremely in high demand also becomes way more valuable over time? And I'm wondering, what is that dynamic going to do to the company? I don't know does that make any sense? Am I thinking about that correctly?
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, it's something we think about a lot. And I think lots of us Tesla investors think about, what's that going to, and Elon has said a few times, it'll be like the largest asset increase in history or something. I forget the term he used, but basically the whole fleet of Teslas out there, 2 or 3 million cars, over half of them have the full self-driving capability, maybe 2 million, let's say. So if it happened tomorrow, 2 million cars suddenly are robo-taxi capable, and what's that going to do to the value of all those cars? Instead of being, resold for $40,000 or $50,000, and now you could, fleet operators will want to buy them from you for $100,000. So I think that's going to become quick, a quick change. It might not happen in one day like that, but I think over the course of a couple months or a few months, as it becomes apparent, these fleet operating business models are very profitable. Lots of folks will be reached out to say, just it's sort of like a miniature version is recently all the used cars. People my mom gets calls from her Subaru dealer saying, hey, we'll buy back your car, for X amount. It's 10% more than what she bought it for a few years ago, whatever, because they could sell it for more. So I think you'll get something like that, but a much more drastic kind of effort to try to buy up used Teslas from, businesses. Maybe it'll be private equity firms, or maybe it'll be Tesla itself, but I think it'll be more likely to be, small businesses or private equity firms or whatever, kind of venture firms setting up fleet operations of robotaxi cars. But the robotaxi thing, like level 4 to level 5 could be, level 5 is when the car can drive itself without anyone in it, right? And level 4 is like when the car can drive itself, but you still kind of need to sit in it, just to take over once in a blue moon when it gets in trouble, or just legally you need to sit in it too. So I'm kind of torn between when level 4 and level 5 happens. I think level 5 will happen much sooner in like China or some other country. I think in the US, there will be pushback in politics that cause it to kind of be a little delayed after level 4 is reached. But I think the change in technology from level 4 to level 5 is going to be quick. Like the capability for level 4 is almost there. And then moving it to level 5 capable technology, an extra 0 or 2 on the 9s, or an extra 9 or 2 on how probably, I think that could happen quickly within a year from there, but I think there'll be some countries that kind of like go all in on the level 5 technology quickly just to advance their economy. Yeah.
Man, it's like whenever I sit down, I really think about that true potential. I get scared. I really get scared because is this too good to be true? Because the way it impacts the financial like capability of Tesla to generate cash or profits seems so unlike anything we've ever seen before, where I'm like I literally will plug in and I play around 10 million cars, 30% on fleet, generating X numbers, market cap 30 trillion. I'm like, okay, wait a second, this can't be right. And then I'll double check, triple check. I'll use lower PEs, higher PEs. I'm like, there's no way. But like, I don't know. I don't know. I struggle with that. Do you struggle with that? Like, do you doubt yourself constantly with Tesla's valuation in the future? Because I do that all the time.
Yeah. It just seems unreal. It does seem unreal. I think it will get there. Yeah. I think it's a healthy exercise to go through because it helps reinforce like belief system and Tesla being convicted on it. And when it's down 20%, just makes you realize, hey, this is the long game. I'm in here for the long. I agree 100% though. Those models, when you take them out 5 or 10 years, it's ridiculous looking at the numbers. And that's why I always love to look at the competition to see if there's any competition that could be somewhat comparable to Tesla, but I don't see it.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. If there's one thing you could change about Tesla today, what would it be?
That's a great question. One thing I could change about Tesla today, what would it be? I think it would be that they should give out, fully functioning, working game controllers with their cars.
Okay.
I've had a little bit of a struggle personally. I'm not a gamer anymore. I used to be when I was younger, but I got kids now. They play like a Nintendo Switch or whatever, but I don't have like the Xbox or the PlayStation. I don't even know what controller. I tried to get like an Xbox controller. I found out after getting it that the wireless controller doesn't work with my latest Tesla. And then I had to get some kind of third-party adapters to order, but I can't figure out how to get them to work. And then someone else said, just get the wired one. Now I got the wired one, but I'm too lazy to like unpackage it to figure out where the wires even go. Sometimes there's junk in my car everywhere. So it's just like, man, I wish they just gave me a controller when the car came out, couldn't I just have a controller? Like there's so many cool games, and I have, my kids could play it like when I run to the store, but I got to allocate like a half hour of time to like try to get it to work now more, at some point soon, just to like plug it in and have a good setup. But I think they could really, the gaming thing is cool. And I would like to appreciate it more other than the touchscreen stuff, which you can do. And it's fun, but like to do the cooler games, you really want to be able to use the controller and 2-player games and such. And my kids would love it. And maybe they could like put some of the games in the backseat screen, like some easy games or something, some very simple games the kids could mess with too. That'd be cool. I think they're planning to probably do that, but maybe it hasn't been rolled out yet. That's the only thing I would say at this point. Service also, I think they're growing so fast, right? And the best service is not needing any service. And I think that's the case most of the time for Tesla. But there have been a few times, the service has been great, but there's a few times where it's like really difficult to get in touch with Tesla, even just following up on my Model X reservation. I don't even know who to follow up with. My solar roof, when I follow, I don't, no, it's hard to find someone accountable that will like give you me their email address, even direct email. It's just like, they're growing so fast. So I understand. I worked at Interactive Brokers. We were growing fast and service was always an issue. But it doesn't mean it can't be solved with accountability, a good system of accountability, where you have some person kind of that has to feel accountable for, each issue that comes in. There's a person instead of just being delegated to a group, where there's each person that makes up the group, they don't feel accountable individually to each service thing. But I think there's better ways to do service, even in a fast growing company.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I came from the service world at Tesla. I was there for 4 years, on the service supply chain side and distribution. And I agree with you 100%. I think initially, while Tesla was getting ramped up and they were making sure that they could generate profit so that they can keep the company going, all of the attention should have been focused in manufacturing. That's what they did. The one thing I noticed is as it became clear that they were going to be profitable, I started seeing some more focus on the supply chain side and the service side. So I saw a little bit more resources being handled there. Some of the projects started getting approved a little bit easier that we wanted to get done. But it's also like, I also know Tesla's trying to balance that with, what is the sort of that first principles approach of like, okay, what should service look like? And let's just do that. And to your point is, best service is no service, but you still have a fleet of cars that doesn't apply to necessarily because it takes time to get there. So, I agree with you 100%. I think it seems like they've gotten better. But I'm sure there's still room to improve, and I'm right there with you because I've owned multiple Teslas. I remember the one time I got into an accident, I had to wait like 2-3 months for a part. That was that hurt. But that's it's part of that. So I'm hoping as I become more and more profitable, more of that focus will shift, or more resources will be freed up to sort of help that side of the business. And I think videos like these, if anybody at Tesla's watching, they're still, let's see if we can do something a little bit better on that side as well. Because
I got a funny story about the service thing. If you guys like an Elon story, actually.
Of course.
So in 2013, I think I was one of the first people on the East Coast to get like a Model S, maybe the first couple hundred bins on the East Coast to get a Model S or whatever. My friend, the IT friend, he had one too. And it was like the greatest car. It was like, maybe it was the beginning of 2014 or end of 2013. I can't remember. I think it was the beginning of 2013. Yeah. The 2012, it debuted in June of 2012 around my first kid's birthday. I remember. So like 6 months later, they started making their first deliveries to the East Coast. And I got my car in like January, February of 2013. I was driving. It was great. It was like the snow, even great in the snow, just rear wheel drive was like better than my old Subaru I had way before that. And I was just so impressed. I had it for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden, it didn't turn on one morning. And I was like, what the heck? And I couldn't like get to work. And I was like, called Tesla. They're like, oh, we'll get you an enterprise rental car. We'll pay for it. Don't worry. We'll send our technician out to, take a look and fix it in no time. So I got the Tesla rental car. Or the enterprise rental car. It was like a Honda Accord or Civic or something like that. And I was like, fine. All right. And then like a week went by, like the Tesla, person went out and checked it out and like called me and was like, yeah, we're going to call in a part and get it fixed. And like a week went by, no follow up. Another week went by, I'm trying to follow up with them. They're not following up with me. And it's like, what the heck? After 2 or 3 weeks, I'm like, man, this is the best car. Like, I don't want to be driving a Honda Civic all the time, even though Tesla's paying for it. I want to drive my Model S. What do I do to like escalate, to get in touch and get this escalated? I didn't know who management was or whatever. So I was like, at my company, people guess the founder's email address sometimes and send them an email. And things get done, So I guessed Elon's email address in 2013, and he was famous then. He had maybe a couple million Twitter followers, but he wasn't uber famous like he is now,
right?
And so I guessed his email, sent a thoughtful email, like, hey, I know there's part shortages or whatever, but it's been a few weeks. I'm not getting an answer. They keep telling me in a few days it'll be fixed, but it's been a few weeks now, and I'm just disappointed because it was such a great car. And sure enough, like 10 minutes later, I get a call from like the Queens, New York service manager, which is like an hour and a half drive from where I am, in Fairfield County, Connecticut. And he says, hey, we're going to send a tow truck up tonight to pick up your car. We're going to bring it to our shop and switch it out with a part. We have a car in here and bring it back to you tomorrow working. I was like, oh, awesome.
Dang, that is
and I was
awesome.
so excited. And I was like, that worked, And then Elon emailed me back like 20 or 30 minutes later, really thoughtful response, and we ended up going back and forth on email for like a few weeks, actually. It was incredible.
That's awesome.
Emails for my grandkids one day.
That's like, so good.
This is the King of Mars. He sent me these emails way back, and so
make it into a NFT.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, but it's just so cool, and
that's great.
Yeah. So it was a really cool story. And, but that's how I got my service worked out quickly. And then more recently, I had like a tire issue in my Plaid that I have, and the tire got flat and they towed it to service, and they didn't have a tire. And it was just a few days. I'm like, well, it's just a flat tire. What's going on? And it was like, oh, I don't know I didn't have a car, it's just my wife's car. We had one car. And I think I said something on Twitter, like, yeah, I'm just wondering when I don't know. I didn't like complain, but then sure enough, like a few hours later, I got a call like, hey, we got your tire. But I feel like I use my Twitter cloud or something to get service then. So I feel like there's people that get stuck in the service. If they don't know how to escalate things, they can, it could be a bad experience occasionally. But, on the other side, I've had like 4 or 5 other flat tires over the years, and it gets fixed like immediately. A tow truck driver, Tesla driver comes and fixes immediately. It's just the one-offs that can be a real problem.
Yeah, it's inconsistency, right? It's one of those things where I think consistency is built with time and sort of experience, and that's, at least from my experience, that's usually what helps those situations. That's the whole back and forth with Elon with the email. I can't even imagine the manager probably got an email directly from Elon, forwarded to him, and he's like, please do this now. And the guy's like,
yeah, probably. Oh, I got to call this guy, and we got to send a tow truck out. I remember when those guys came on the Tesla tow truck too. I remember the evening they came out to pick up my car, and I was all excited. I was talking to them, and I was like, you guys are working at Tesla, stick with the company. It's going to be such a big company. You'll be rich in 5 or 10 years. I hope they stuck with it, because I remember thinking like, these guys are like probably like, bottom of the totem pole workers at Tesla doing tow truck work. And I was just I was trying to tell them like, hey, this is the greatest company. I don't know if you know it or not, but this company's going to explode and you're in a great position. And it's just incredible. Like,
that's so great. That is such a great story, man. Still got you for 15 minutes. Is that still okay?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I'm curious now, like, I want to sort of shift gears a little bit more. Actually, I wanted to ask you this before. So you said you used to play games. You were gaming a little bit when you were younger. What sort of games did you play?
Oh man, I was the number one game. I loved a lot of role playing games like Final Fantasy and stuff like that. I also liked a lot of strategy games. Like there was this company KOEI that had like these cool like board game strategy games, are almost like you're like a Chinese dynasty and you take over other Chinese dynasties or whatever. It was cool. It was like early games like, Civilization today or whatever you would call it, I guess.
Sure.
And like early game, before Warcraft, there was games that were like earlier, and I would get into those, simpler versions of that. And I would love those games. But I really fell in love with Street Fighter 2.
Okay. Of course.
Yeah.
I was a Tekken guy. I like Tekken a lot.
Oh, Tekken was later. Once I invested so much time to get good and got really good at Street Fighter 2. I'd go to the arcade 1/4, pop it in, and there'd be like it was when Street Fighter 2 was really popular. And everyone would challenge me. I could play for like an hour, like 30 people straight.
Wow.
With 1/4. It was like so cool. I feel like so important. I feel so popular, so powerful.
You're a legend, Emmet.
Yeah, I felt like that. I mean, then I talked to Dave Lee, and apparently he was even better at Street Fighter 2 because he went to like the state championship for California.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But me and him have joked on some of our chats that we got to find a way to play Street Fighter 2 against each other. Just
my God. That would be amazing. That
was an awesome game. And then like Mortal Kombat came out right after, and it was like, I'm not going to invest a ton of time to learn another game like this. And but Street Fighter 2 was amazing. Then when I got into college, like by the time I got into college, there was like James Bond, like the multiplayer games. James Bond was like one of those first shooter games where you could be like
on 64, right?
Yeah, that was awesome. And there was like secret rooms in some of the levels you could hide in. It was cool.
GoldenEye, I think it was. Yeah,
GoldenEye. That was the name of it. Yeah, that was really cool. Mario Kart, obviously. And I also was a huge Madden football fan. I loved Madden football. What's funny is, you had the online gaming, but the first version of online gaming, Sega, I think it was Sega Genesis, had this thing called the X Band. And it was like, it must have been in like in like 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade. So it must have been like 1993 or 94. And it was like the first online gaming with like Sega Master System. You put on this X Band, it was like a dial-up modem, and you play someone else on like Madden football or something. It was really cool over the internet. It was like the first version of that stuff. And I remember having that, and it was like super cool. And Street Fighter 2, I remember in Super Nintendo when it came out with it, my friends and we ordered the Super Famicom version, which was the Japanese version of Super Nintendo called Super Famicom. And it came out there like a year or 2 years before it came out in the US. We had to get like a Super Famicom adapter for your Nintendo 64 or whatever. And then we had it like the legitimate Street Fighter 2 version on our Nintendo at home, like a year or two before everyone else. It was so cool. All our friends would always want to come over and play it because my friends and I always were into like cheat codes of like getting those Game Pro or what was electronic, I don't know, there's all these cool magazines. Were you into gaming back then?
Oh yeah,
too?
huge. I was, yeah. I just got to say, the one image I have in my mind now is like this very wise Dave Lee that we know now, like back in the day, just shitting on people on Street Fighter. It's like, that's the image I have in my head.
Yeah. He said he was like went to the state championships of
That's
California.
so badass.
I was like, man, I thought I could beat him. And then when he told me that, I was like, he's probably kicking my butt. But, maybe I would.
You got to try, man. You never know. You guys got to play. You got to. Yeah.
It's funny. I got it on my Nintendo Switch recently, and I played it a couple times, but the controller's not the same, Yeah. And, but I went online to play like 2 times. I was so rusty. I was getting my butt kicked probably by some young kid.
But there's some delay too online. Like with those fighting games, I feel like playing online defeats the purpose, because even that 50 millisecond lag is like everything, because that's like a counter you missed right there,
Yeah.
It's very, very different. Yeah.
And I need like the joystick where you're like, like at the arcade almost, where you have the joystick, like it's hard.
It's more precise.
Yeah. I tried to get the joystick version of the Nintendo Switch. Actually, I ordered that too. It was like $30. But even when you put that down, you can't every time I move it with my grown up arms, it like moves the whole joystick to one side. I'm like, this isn't working. I gotta nail it in something to make it work.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
That's funny. So funny.
Just as a grown up, it's so much harder to do video games. My kids are really into like Minecraft and Roblox. And I started playing this game called Minecraft Dungeons with my kids. It was fun, a fun little bonding experience. It's like a 4-player game. Yeah. Did you play games much anymore?
Yeah. I did. I still play a little bit. I try to like keep with that side of my childhood. So I was like a big, so I grew up on Sonic, and then I really got into PC gaming. So I did a lot of like Counter-Strike, World of Warcraft, Warcraft 3, Red Alert, Age of Empires. Like that was like my jam. And when we described that Chinese Dynasty board game, like Age of Empires is like sort of that strategy. Like so fun.
I love those games. Yeah. If those hit me at the right age, I would have been so much more addicted to even those. But I think I was a few years before those started coming out when I was really into the gaming stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah. It was such a blast, and I still play. So I just got Age of Empires 4. It came out recently, so I kind of got back into that. I picked up chess. I try to play like chess online and get my ass kicked, by a bunch of like super smart people.
I like it too. I'm not that good, but I like playing. Like the 14-day games where you have like 2 weeks to make a move, and I have multiple things on. Sometimes on the toilet, I look at my chess.com for 5 minutes and I pick my moves, and then I play my dad. Yeah, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's a really good time. Yeah, it's and what's interesting too, like so the whole Roblox thing, because you're invested in Roblox, right? That's one of you seem very high on it. So do you see sort of that? Like, are we transitioning towards a future where more and more people are going to be gaming, and that's why you're so high on that platform? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that a little bit. I don't know if I'm sure you've talked about it before, but I'm curious if you don't mind. Yeah.
No, the way I see Roblox is sort of a platform itself, sort of like the App Store for the iPhone was a platform, I see Roblox as sort of a platform for developers to build content. And sometimes the content is in the form of games, or sometimes just some social online experience. But whatever the content is, they're incentivized to build the best content to attract the most people. And that means of the tens of millions of daily active users of Roblox, they're going to play the coolest content, and the people that make the coolest content are going to make the most money and incentivized to make cooler content. So you have this kind of flywheel effect where you get more content, more users, more content, more users, keeps going. And Roblox gets a little piece of that all the time, just like Apple gets a piece of all the App Store revenue, right? So I think Roblox is so far ahead in that game, and they've built the ecosystem, or one blogger who I follow calls it the company town, I guess, model, not like an ecosystem. Or a walled garden or whatever. So I think they built that infrastructure, that ecosystem, or a company town, whatever you want to call it, in such a really really well-run way, where they have their own programming language. They have their own little economy going on. The software is this cloud-based that works on all kinds of devices the same way. And so it's very frictionless. Like I play Roblox with my kids occasionally, but it's so simple. Anyone with an iPad or even an iPhone, you could just put the app on, touch the button, and instantly, if you know your grandkids' username, type it in and start enjoying some kind of online experience with them, whatever they're doing instantly. You don't have to have some people talk about Steam or this new thing called Sandbox, which is like a crypto version of it. But those things are all like have a lot of friction, like number one, they're kind of Steam, especially like I tried doing that on my computer, right? A few years ago when I first got Oculus, I tried to get some like off games on Steam and I couldn't figure out like I'm not a programmer. I don't know what like an INI file is or whatever these files, I had to like Google every little thing. And like after a long time, I figured out like one step of improvement. I was like, oh, okay, I figured that out. But it's just like, if you're not a programmer or developer, like it's hard to use some of these other things. And I think Roblox has a much more frictionless experience. And
Got it.
I think they have such a huge population of content already that it just seems like no one's going to compete with them.
Got it. So the barrier of entry to that sort of environment or platform is extremely low. That it makes for both the creator and the user side. Okay, very interesting.
Yeah,
I gotta look more into that.
My kids are even learning the Roblox coding language. They're enjoying. They're building their own little worlds, and you have lots of kids apparently, as a hobby, kind of trying to build their own cool stuff. It's like a great way to educate them on programming or coding, It's really cool. Yeah, I think it's really neat what they're doing. I think it's I like the founder and their mission. They've been at it for a long time. Wow. And I think the medium to long-term future of Roblox is strong. I just don't know who's going to compete. Like anytime some other cool game comes out, whether it's Among Us, which you probably heard of, or some other cool game, then immediately a Roblox developer can basically create an identical version and call it something slightly different, and so that happens. So whatever cool content comes out just gets reproduced basically at Roblox immediately. Even when like Netflix has Squid Game, like the most popular thing, within like a week, all of a sudden there's a Squid Game on Roblox that became super popular.
Wow.
And sometimes if they call it the same thing, they have to get like a licensing right, and they do that. But even if they don't get the license, they can call it something similar and everyone kind of knows what it is anyway. It's like, it's just, I don't know. Roblox just seems to be unstoppable to me.
That seems, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant model that they've built there. It's like they gamified coding in a way. And then it's also like, and by doing that, you're building this incredible base of developers that would have never probably been able to make games. And a small percentage of those folks are probably creating some brilliant stuff that we've never seen before,
Yeah. No, it's all about the developers. There's even teams of developers funded by venture capitalists creating like much more impressive games on Roblox. It's like, I've thought about looking up some of these companies kind of built, formed just for building content on Roblox and trying to fund them myself because I think it's a big future.
Wow, that's amazing. I know we're coming up on time here, so I just want to throw you one more question, Emmet. And usually I like to end these with like a more philosophical, like, trying to like really get into the mind of how somebody thinks about sort of the world. What do you think is humanity's purpose?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I know. I've been thinking a lot about Elon's philosophy on this. Is to find out the question where the answer is the universe, and I guess he gets that from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's interesting. I think humanity's purpose might be almost to not know what humanity's purpose is, but to experience free will and do with it what you may, and whether or not it's judged or not, I don't know, but we don't know. That's our purpose. Our purpose is almost not to know. And then we can truly experience free will in some respects, right? If we knew what the purpose was, then you almost have some of your decisions programmed into you based on that purpose, right? So I think there's something to it with that. But it's very kind of scary and freeing at the same time.
Brilliant. Wow. Yeah, I tend to think along those lines as well. It's like that's the journey I'm on, Ryan. It's like I'm trying to figure out like why are we all here? But I'm finding that process is so enjoyable. It's like I get to this channel I'm building is part of that journey. I want to talk to more people and connect with more folks that are part of a community that I really love. But I feel like, and I'm trying to do that with like the intent of like what's the answer to this whole thing? Like, why am I here? But then that process has been so rewarding already that I'm like, I don't even care if I find out what it's all about. As long as I get to do this, like, why would you want to know kind of thing, But I'm sure it'll evolve as time goes along. And
it'll evolve. Yeah. We'll never truly know until you're dead. And then when you're dead, we don't know what the heck happened. Right? But you cross over to some either non-existence or something that you can't come back from. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if like in the future, there'll be like a business of people creating near-death experiences, like artificial, like, drugs can do stuff, like supposedly do that, but maybe there'll be businesses where like you can actually make someone physically die with a very high likelihood of resuscitating them, like 99.9% likelihood, but you make them die for a few minutes, their heart starts beating, everything. And then you can, with the 99.9%, you can resuscitate them back. And, people will kind of venture into like, what the heck's going on when we die? I wonder if there's a business case for that in the future. I'm curious.
That'd be wild. The insurance policy for that business is probably the most
initially it would be really hard. Yeah. But,
wow.
And it would be kind of cool. I don't know if I'd do it or not, but if you had like a 99.9%, you had, thousands of people do it, at some point in my life, I'd probably try that.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Emmet, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on. I had a blast. If you ever want to come back on, dude, like I would love to have you back at any time.
We're going to have you on our channel at some time. We have a little channel that's budding with content. We do some interviews. We've been doing a lot of there's so many Tesla bulls out there, but we can interview about other things. I feel like we kind of, on our channel, we're trying to get a variety of things, but we've interviewed so many Tesla bulls, but we'd love to talk to you about just life in general and your experience at Tesla and such, if you're open to it.
I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely. And anytime, man. Yeah, man. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. All right, Emmet, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you.
All right. Thanks.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.